Michael. I am so glad to have you here today.
Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great.
Wonderful. So, for everybody listening who does not know this voice and who is Michael, you have helped hundreds of investors, actually thousands of investors, build wealth with rental properties, especially in the indie market. And I know my listeners are going to get so much out of your experience. So, for those of you tuning in who have not met Michael yet, he's been an entrepreneur for over 20 years with a serious track record in real estate, stock market investing, and building multiple streams of passive income. He has been a part of 1,100 real estate transactions, worked with clients using everything from IRAs, 1031 exchanges, and has helped investors from all over the world build cash flowing portfolios. And if that isn't enough, he is a husband, a dad of four, an adventure racer. We'll have to talk about that. A speaker, and just an all around wealth building machine. And before we get into all of that, let's give a warm welcome to Michael.
Wow. Thank you. It's almost if I wrote that. No, I'm kidding.
Or it's almost as if I kind of got some tips from your website, right?
Right. I'm going to have to add that. And a better pickleball player than you, Melissa. Rawr, no.
Oh, way better. Considering that I've played pickleball once in my life.
Oh, great.
You have me beat.
Thank you for the intro. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Michael, before we get into all of the technical stuff, I'd love to know, when did you first realize that out-of-state investing was the strategy?
Great question. In fact, it was, by many measures, people don't, the thing that you're looking for, which is essentially for me, that the passive income that really I was looking for, I went a long way around the horn, man. I was supposed to be a stock market expert. I was supposed to be able to, trade the stock market from Eastern time, that's 9:30 to 4, and, live on my millions or whatever I was supposed to do. That was my goals. And I realized after doing that for 5 to 10 years, it just wasn't scalable. I wasn't building equity very fast. I couldn't really give my kids or my wife anything. It wasn't building any enterprise value. There's no tax deductions. So even though I enjoy it, it really ended up becoming a hobby, from covered calls to option strategies to iron condors, those boutique things. And so I kind of came across real estate. I don't say as a mistake, but guys like to talk to each other and kind of rib each other, trash talk each other. And that's really how I came across it. I had a kind of a dream house, if you will, for me, which was a kind of a nice house on the cul-de-sac. And my buddy was in Northern Ohio. And he said, wow, and I knew I made more money than him. And he's like, well, you make a lot of money, but all you did with it is buy one house. I'm like, oh, wait a second, buddy, look at my W-2, look at my 1090, He's like, buddy, I've got like 15 houses and I've never made as much money as you, but my tenants are paying off all my mortgages. And, my rents are $1,500, $2,000. So by the time I retire, I'll have $30,000 a month coming in. And all I had is one house at the time. And I'm like, I think I just got my butt kicked. So I was like, listen, I gotta get started on this. And that was about 15 years ago. And since then, I've done just over $100 million of transactions, 1,100 homes, and really not by mistake. I failed a lot in the journey, but by design. And so I jumped in at 2 feet and only in the Midwest. And so a lot of investors will call me up. I seemingly have half my clients in California for whatever reason, and really, really enjoy these Midwest markets.
Wow. So it's interesting because we weren't taught this in school, right? And so it took your buddy to be like, hey, man, like, why are you not doing this? And so that's really why we in this real estate world reach out to mentors and read the books and listen to the podcasts. And that is why I am so excited to dive in with you, because
sure.
you are an expert. You are that person that, when we're looking at mentors, we want to look at somebody who's steps ahead of us, right? And you admitted you have failed. I have failed. And that is part of real estate, right? That is part of real estate.
Well, it's funny. I like to do a lot of sports, and you virtually learn nothing by success. You learn, okay, that's one way to do it right. But in today's day and age, once you do it right, that's on film. Okay. Let's call it a football game. So as soon as you make that cool play, man, everyone knows about it, right? They can practice defending against that one cool play that you made, man. So it's about almost failing your way to success. I've got a 24-year-old son, and he's struggling right now in a little sales gig that he's doing, selling printers and copiers. I'm like, buddy, this is hard. You wanted to jump in the deep end. There's no secret. We got to double your rate of failure. We've all been there. We've all made mistakes, and that's one of the best ways to succeed. Is you can literally fail your way there.
Yeah. Well, and here's the world that I'm in where I want real estate investing to be as passive and easy as possible. And most of our listeners are those busy working professionals, and they don't have necessarily the time to put in the reps to get that experience and to make your mistakes that you learned from. And so the idea of easy real estate investing out of state is the goal. That's what, that if we can lean on somebody to teach us their mistakes, how they did it, and then that's going to make our risk a lot lower and make it a little bit easier. So that is kind of leading into what we're going to be talking about today with Michael is how can out of state investors actually be successful?
Let me just back up a little bit because you said like proverbial air quotes, right, around out of state. And I just want to reflect on my background. When I traded the stock market and I wanted to go buy, an eBay or a Microsoft, I just point and clicked my mouse and I bought a company out of California or Dell Computer out of Texas. It didn't. So for me as an investor, I'm in the Midwest. I'm in, Indianapolis. So but I wanted to own Dell Computer when they were doing their stock splits, or I wanted to own Microsoft for the dividend. So for me, it just made sense. I wanted to live in the Midwest. I'm born and raised in Chicago, but I wanted to own those companies that were based in California or Austin. So I didn't have like a big thing that I needed to only buy companies in Chicago. I wanted to do what's best for me and my family. And so when my first flip was in Burbank, California, I had an opportunity. It didn't really matter the zip code. I wanted the opportunity. So that's kind of how I was raised. I didn't have like I needed to invest in Chicago. That was my family was too important. I wanted to invest where it made sense.
And that's so right, because I'm not looking across country when I invest like for fun. Like I'm not like, oh, cool, I want to go invest over here. It's because I have to. Like my local market in California is expensive. It's not landlord friendly. There's zero cash flow to be had. And so I do have to look out of state, and I have to be okay with that if I'm going to do this thing. So just to kind of recap, so you are what I call a provider. So you are the guy in Indianapolis. When I'm working with an investor or talking to somebody and they're looking at these Midwest markets that everybody loves to talk about, and they're like, hey, how do I do this? I'm in California and I want to buy a property in the Midwest. How do I do it? And I'm like, Michael's one of the guys that are going to help you do it.
There you go. There you go. Well, to kind of, again, I just like this framework because you've got a great base here. And it kind of reminds me of why I pay a guy to do an oil change on my car. I mean, my dad used to teach me on his Buick to drive it up on the ramps and get underneath the car and unscrew the oil filter. And I guess I could do it with my dad's Buick, 25 years ago, but my time just becomes more valuable, right? Hire a CPA to do your taxes. I guess you could maybe do your own. It depends. I don't know. I just rather spending the money on a guy who that's what he does all day long, right? And so the same thing with someone like me, or it's kind of like if I hire a travel person to make my trip to Italy like really awesome because I don't know Italy that well, so I hire the travel lady to book me on events that would interest me, right? So the same thing when you're doing this type thing is you're an expert. Like I've got a lot of California clients doing their jobs, and I said, well, that's your job. My job is to make sure we can replace your 6-figure income with rent. And that's what I enjoy doing. So let me kind of walk you through it. So what I was taught, I went to, after we sold that company, is I went to teach for Rich Dad seminars in Arizona. And even though I knew a lot about the stock market, I played dumb because I was back then about real estate. And I just kind of really borrowed from their experience. Okay. And some guys liked whatever, tax liens, foreclosures, And the guys who were a little bit wealthier and had a little bit more money, they were buying and holding and replacing their income with turnkey rentals. And they really love these Midwest markets. So originally I was, one of my mentors had 100 homes, and I said, let me take you out to lunch. And what's so interesting about all this knowledge that your listeners are learning is we used to say that if it was all about knowledge, then all the librarians, right, would be millionaires with great sex lives, is what we used to say. You have to take action, right? So you can't keep going to the seminars and the podcast. You need to go buy your first house or two and be like, oh, it's not as big of a deal, or, oh, it stresses me out, or whatever is, when people come up to me and they say, I want to start with 10 homes, I go, well, let's start with 4. Let's start with 2. Let's relax. I'm looking for long-term relationships, So that's a good little context for your audience there.
Yeah, no, perfect. I love that.
Yeah. And a little background why I was then, after that happened, is one of my coworkers was an executive at UPS. Okay. So if you don't know, UPS is based in Indianapolis. It was a private company before it went public. And so when you own private shares, there's really no secondary marketplace for a private share. And so you buy with the hopes of either an IPO, initial public offering, or you get bought out. Right. And so when that company did go public, we used to joke, even the janitor was a millionaire. Not really, but everyone made money. And the smart people bought real estate. And so that's what I did is I copied off the coattails 15, 16, 17 years ago, who's now one of my business partners who owned 20 homes. And he kind of taught me the ropes. And then what I did is I bought my first 10 homes with his help. And so that's kind of how it all started. And then right during that time, my story in my book is right during that time, my dad was diagnosed 21 years ago with cancer. He was diagnosed in November, and then he passed away in January. And I said what I thought every son should say, which is, I will take care of mom. I didn't know what that meant, but it sounds like something you should say. And so when I said that, originally I had some of my mom's money in the stock market, but you just have to be willing to lose a little bit of money when you use the strategies that I was talking about in the stock market. It's kind of like, going to Vegas. You're supposed to stand, play blackjack. You're supposed to stand on a 20, but the dealers can still get 21, right? So you can still lose money making all the right choices. And my mom at age 55, 60 did not have the emotional bandwidth to handle that. So we rolled over her account. We bought deeds inside of her IRA and helped her replace dad's income. And then someone in Los Angeles raised their hand and says, can I be your mom? I said, wait a second here. There could be a business behind this. So that was, over 1,000 houses ago.
Wow. Wow. Well, so I've been an investor for the last 10 years, and I developed what I call the freedom success formula.
I like it.
And thank you. It comes down to 3 things. And this leads into you. Okay. So stick with me here. The first one is the property, the process, and the third one is the people. So we've got the 3 Ps. And you got to have all 3. You can't have one without the other. And the last one, the people, this is where a lot of investors get stuck. Because number one, as you just explained, working with people that have been there, done that ahead of you. But then also, who are the people that you need to succeed, especially when somebody is investing from 2,000 miles away? So that's what we're really going to unpack today. So what I did, Michael, I went straight to some of my investors and I asked them, if you could sit down with someone like Michael, who knows a lot about helping investors invest in out-of-state markets, meaning they live in California and they're trying to invest somewhere else, what would you ask? So
I'm excited.
I was going to say, how do you feel about this? Can we roll through these?
Yeah, of course. I love it.
Okay, perfect. So I came up with these clients 6 questions that every out-of-state investor needs to have the right answers before they jump in. So here we go. Number 1. Well, actually, let me ask you this really quickly before I jump into their questions. This is my question. What do you think are the most common fears or worries when people come to you when they're thinking about buying out of state?
They're really not super nervous, but there is an emotional, when you go to dinner and you buy $100 dinner or whatever it may be, you get the value right away, right? These people are usually, your clients are usually, 35 to 55-ish years old, and they're taking their hard earned money from a very safe environment. Usually could be a savings account, checking account, could be an IRA, whatever. And they feel they're putting it, in air quotes, in harm's way to a certain extent. They're buying something that they can't drive by, like a Toyota Camry or a steak dinner or 123 Main Street. So what I have to do sometimes is say, wait a second here. We're all like each other. The house is worth X. It's appraised at X, right? Okay. I mean, so are there risks? Potentially. We have insurance, we have an appraisal, we have an inspection. That's where you kind of leverage yourself a little bit. And that's why I always tell people that maybe started a little bit too late in life or maybe got divorced and they need to catch up. I go, let's get going. But they're nervous, like they think it's in harm's way. They're like, oh, at least I'll lose this money. I don't want you to think it like we're going to lose money. You bring money to Vegas if you want to lose it, and then you set it on fire. Whatever you bring there, you're going to set it on fire. That's not what we're doing here. This is where we're replacing your income. It's more strategy than people think. It's not risky in my view because of all the different circuit breakers we put in place. So
Right. Well, I think the thing that I hear the most is people go, "Well, I can't drive by it. I can't touch it." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, I get that, but are you a contractor? Are you a plumber? Are you, if there was something wrong with it, are you the one that's going to go fix it? Because there's plenty of people that you can hire for those things, and we can look on Google Maps and we can see that it's still there, like it exists, and the title company is going to make sure it exists and it's titled correctly. So like that idea of being able to like drive by it and touch it, it's kind of like your example of the stock market. It's like, well, you don't see that and you freely invest in it. And most of us don't even know what the hell we're doing with the stock market.
Right. So to echo that, I like that. Now that said, I want you to, if you're mature enough in your kind of investing, mindset, is they always say, rich people have money and wealthy people have time. Okay. So Melissa, if you and I were to go ahead and say, we really have an opportunity to buy that Subway franchise in the airport, let's just say you and I chip in X, I don't know, call it 50 grand each. Well, we better not be making sandwiches. We better be maybe doing some books, maybe having a meeting and, trying to have, whatever. We're doing the numbers. It's a business opportunity. We're not making sandwiches. You don't have the noon shift, Melissa. You don't actually so when you're evaluating, these opportunities, you don't really do the work. You don't do the plumbing. You don't get the calls late night that a tree fell down and I need it cleaned up. You have people for that. I did have a new investor actually says, hey, listen, my wife would really appreciate that you can walk through the home on FaceTime. Ever since COVID, we can do everything online. I go, well, did you review all the pictures? They go, yeah, but it'll make her feel better. I go, great. What time? Wednesday at noon. I go, great. Let's go. It didn't matter to me, right? I mean, they bought 2 houses. We walked through both of them. They had questions they wouldn't thought of before. Great. That's fine.
Yeah. I think we're our own worst enemy. And sometimes
many times
there's an underlying, just extra comfort that people need. And really, and that's why I appreciate you and like why I love working with you, why I have for so long is I know that there are some people that need that extra touch and that little extra hand holding. And for whatever reason, we don't need to, psychology dissect it, but we're there to help people. And that's the idea of this.
You got it.
So, okay. Are you ready? Question number 1.
I'm ready.
Okay. How do I know if the neighborhood I'm investing in is actually good? The deal might look good on paper, but how do I trust that the location is solid, safe, and has long-term potential?
I love it. That's a fantastic question because objectively we can evaluate the property that's worth X, right? 100 grand, 200 grand, right? We have an appraisal via comps, right? However, when you go do a neighborhood rating, A class, B class, C class, that reeks of subjectivity, right? Who says it's A? Who says it's B? Is there a scale somewhere? How do we know? One of the key ways to do that, to reverse engineer that for your own sanity or your own peace of mind, I should say, is to reverse engineer the rents. Okay, so you go on Zillow and then you find out nearby what are things renting for. Okay, so let's just say in my case, let's just say a property rents for $1,500. We do 3 times rent, 3 times of net rent. It has to be your income. So let's just say it's $1,500. That means you have to net $4,500. All right. That means you have to gross, call it $5,500, which means you have to make about $70,000 a year. Okay. So $70,000 a year, that person in the Midwest has plenty of choices on where to go. Okay. They can go A class, B class, C class. They're not going to go where there's bullet holes, and they could probably afford A class. I specialize in B class because it's the highest rate of return. So if there's something that's renting and everything's renting for $600, let's just say, using my math, that means you have to net $1,800. That's not the highest class of renter you're going to attract. It's one of the reasons why multi-units don't work well in my particular city. Okay. So that's one way to use a little bit of empirical data to go ahead and go from there. Next is many people will say schools. Now, schools are a little bit better indicator when you do a primary. Okay. However, less than 55% of my clients, or my tenants rather, have children. So if I have a truck driver who makes $85,000 a year and he's living with his dad who's a veteran, they don't really care about schools. They just want a nice house in a good neighborhood, So makes sense, right? So what you can do is you can, of course, rely on your provider, and you can, what I would do is I would pull those comps, those comps in the area. I can provide comps for everything. And then we can look around those areas. We can look at a crime map, okay, and get those online if you want. And then also you can talk to, like I said, is other owners in the area. We have a lot of owners. And I can say, and what are the average maintenance things we see? We don't see, our tenants are staying on average for 4 to 5 years in these homes. They're not moving because we buy in good areas. I can prove that. So those are other, a few different things we can do. And then next is you can drive around with me on FaceTime. And we can say, hey, this is what's going on. This is the deal. This is the Marshall's this is the Chase Bank. This is the car dealership. It looks like most of the Midwest. So those are a few things we can do. It is a little bit subjective, but also when you look at those rents to purchase price, it needs to make sense.
I could not agree more with you. Thank you so much for breaking that down. It is very subjective to personal opinion, and everybody has their own. And you can even start going into B minus, A plus. You can start going into all those. And I'm like, who made that up? Like, where did that come from? And so I think that honestly is the best way to look at it. I also kind of look at a little bit, if you're in a little bit better area, the property is going to appreciate a little bit more, which means you're going to have a little bit more rental increases. And so if we can kind of add that into it, then that's going to be a little bit better area.
Yeah, because this question was kind of common, is I went ahead and produced a video that filmed all of our neighborhoods that I send to people that are interested. So I just send that video to them. So they're like, oh, I get it. It's, like a brick ranch, shotgun ranch, 1,000, 1,500 square feet, indestructible. I go, yep, that's kind of what you're looking at.
Yep, that's it.
That's what you want.
Perfect.
You don't want, like me in the Midwest, we try to not hardly ever go even 2 stories. Because why do you have a bathroom upstairs? Because if that breaks, it hurts the first floor. All these different things that we do, we try to reverse engineer it for performance. So
perfect. And by the way, anybody who's listening who wants that video that Michael just mentioned, just reach out to me, check out the show notes, and I'll get that video over to you.
Great idea.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
So, okay, question number 2. Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What questions should I ask a property manager before I ever hire them?
There's lists of this stuff all over the place, right? Now, that said, if you keep going through the list, you sound like someone who's reading off a list.
Right. Well, and also, by the way, it's also very annoying. I can only imagine being the property manager on the other end of that phone call, and somebody is just pounding them and just taking.
Right. So here's one thing that I would ask is, because we did property management as a necessary evil because we had so many of our personal holdings, okay? And we were sick of paying other people. We thought we could do it better. We've done that for years and years and years. Property management is not a fun business. No one calls you happy. No one calls and says, hey, I heard you're going to raise my rent. Hey, great idea. No one never does that, right? So it's not necessarily a very fun business. Like pickleball is a lot of fun, right? So I would say this. I would say make sure the property manager owns homes in your area, okay? I would also say make sure that they are vertically integrated, okay? What I mean by that is, like us, we own the construction company, we own the acquisition company, we actually own the self-directed IRA company, but then we also own the property management company. So what happens there, why that's so important that they own everything vertically instead of using a third party, is we get really quick feedback whether or not we're doing a good job on our rehabs. What worked before 10 years ago doesn't work now. What do tenants want now? What is this? We thought this worked, that it didn't work. As a property management company, so do they own those doors? My business partner and I have had income off rent for years and years and years. What are the tricks to getting people to stay? What is this? Are you in the area, or do you sell in 15 areas, or just one, So do you physically have your money tied in there? Because money is emotional and you want to take care of people, right? If it's money, it's emotional. You want to do business with people you know, like, and trust. So that would be number one. Do you own those doors in the area? Of course, the standard, all the different, I'm not going to go over the little administrative questions, how much you charge and all that other stuff. So that would be number one, is do they own doors in that area? Sure. How long have you been doing it? Another good question would be, what should I expect as far as vacancy, or what, if you were to set expectations when the lease becomes, expires, okay, what should I expect? I like to underpromise and overdeliver to folks, right? And I'll let them know that if it's the spring or the summertime, it's not going to take long to rent. No one likes to move during the winter, though. So if all of a sudden you bought the house in December and your property manager mistakenly gave you a 2-year lease, in the December, we only give an 18-month lease, so it expires in the spring or summer. So we get a better chance to rent, right? But if all of a sudden you bought one and they give you a 2-year lease that expires in December or January, it could sit vacant for a minute, because people don't like to move during it. So as long as they're honest and transparent, I don't do Section 8 investing necessarily, but people might say that Section 8 is guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed, right? Anybody can move for whatever reason. So we never use the G word. So just as you feel honest, you feel that they've been around for a while. And then, like me, if something screws up, we take ownership of it, because most of our investors have, 5 to 25 homes. So we give people warranties on our work, things like that. We stand behind it. I answer my phone, a little bit old school, but why not? We have people's money. We want to take care of people. So those are things that you get a good feeling about, that they've been in the area for a long, long time.
Right. I love that too, because also the idea here is you are building a relationship.
Hands down.
It's not just transactional, especially if you're an investor who wants to grow their portfolio, which everybody wants to grow a portfolio. I've never heard of anybody saying, "Hey, I want to buy one property, Melissa." We want to build relationships. And so if we can get a property manager on the phone and actually talk like human to human, don't just go through like a chart and go, I'm going to check these boxes off and see if you pass. I think it's more of a, also use your gut instincts when you're asking these questions and communicate.
Totally agree. A perfect example. There was some tree work that needed to happen in the springtime. It's very common. And I went to my investor, who's been with me for years. He owns, I think, 4 houses. And I said, "Hey, Victor, tree work's not cheap, but we need to be proactive. The tree's dead. We've got to take it down. It's not fun. Here's the cost." He goes, "Oh, okay, no problem. I haven't had any expenses on this house for a long, long time. I can see the tree. I can see the before and after." Okay. He says, "Do you want me to fund it, or do you want me to, contribute, or do you want me to take it out of rent?" Is what he asked. He asked me. I said, "You can do whatever you want. I mean, we've got a great relationship. If you want to ACH the money to me, great. If you want me to take it out of rent, whatever's best for you, Victor. Are you traveling right now?" He's like, "No, I'm not. I'll send it in. Whatever." You got to have that, because these are the guys that refer you other clients. It's easy. We like, we want to do business with people we want to go on vacation with, right? And refer us business. In fact, we started a new thing with our tenants, that we give tenants a referral bonus when they go ahead and refer us additional tenants. Okay. So we have had a very organic growth within our tenant base, and we're looking for that, because I want a variety of reasons why you're staying in the property. You just refer the property 2 streets over to your aunt, who could be a babysitter for your kids. There's another reason for you to stay in the property. All these different marketing things we do, just like anybody would, right? But we do that organically. So all of a sudden it makes sense,
That is so brilliant. There's a lot more of more than meets the eye going on in the back scenes of a property manager's brain.
Oh yeah,
their office and strategies.
No, yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is a very good question. So let's see how you're going to handle this one.
Oh, I'm nervous.
So, what should I expect a good property manager to handle? What is my job as the owner? So, how basically I'm looking at that as going, they want to be passive, but they also don't want to be totally in the dark. Like,
right.
What is that right balance?
So what I like to do with folks in the beginning, we do a welcome call with investors, and I have my office manager, project manager, Bonnie, on that call. And I say, we like to match your pace. Okay. We have people that say, "Send me my money, send me my 1099. Okay. At the end of the year, right. Or we have people that are like, "I kind of want to learn." I'm like, what is this? What is, why did you put a clean out in? what are the benefits? And I don't mind that at all because that makes them smarter, better investors, right? So, but I ask them to be clear on that. If someone says, how many shingles are on the roof? That's not a good investor for me because I don't know. You're too much of an engineer. I love you engineers, but it's too much. How many nails are in the roof? I also don't know. But if you say, hey, listen, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to grow my portfolio, but touch base. So we as a company, we will match your pace. That's what I always say to folks. Now, then that said, is our products, we don't really have a lot of maintenance because we spend such a huge amount on our rehabs. Okay. Now that said, if you own a home for 8-9 years, like owning a car for 8-9 years, things break down. Gutters get full. Things happen to a property, right? So at that time where it's usually not major mechanicals if you buy one of ours, but it's usually more wear items, right? From water heaters to whatever might cause you trouble, is go over with your property manager and ask them questions. And feel free to ask me or any property managers, is there a more inexpensive, efficient solution? Do we have to replace the water? There's only a few working components inside an HVAC system. We're okay replacing any one of those if we feel it's not throwing money away. At some point, you got to get a new system. We're okay with that. We own the same doors you do. We can, you got to keep the tenant happy, but we don't need it to cost us thousands of dollars. Is there a more inexpensive solution? Many times with our newer investors, there's not a lot of expenses, so they don't really have any questions. Just feel free to call me up when you want to buy more.
I love that. Is there a more or a cheaper way to do it? Essentially, I love that because here's the thing, and I know some people are probably thinking this right now: is property managers, if there's an expense that comes in, they add their fee on top of that, right? And I think that's fair. People ask me that about, oh, do you know they added 10% to the cost of that? And I go, well, yeah, they actually have to pay somebody in the office to take those calls to, get bids. Let's say it's the HVAC system is out.
Sure.
They're going to have to hire somebody to make those calls and get somebody over to the house, and there's coordinating, you got to get in with the tenant. And so some people fear that, the first thing the property manager is going to say is, oh yeah, let's replace the entire HVAC unit because they're going to be able to add their 10% on top of that cost. And there are a lot of people out there doing that. And so I love what you said is just, hey, is there a better solution that's cheaper? Maybe we don't have to replace the entire thing. And it's also letting the person know that you're working with, like, hey, I'm kind of checking you and I actually care about my budget.
Yeah. Perfect example is we had a water heater that was on the blink. We, those things you want to pay. Holes in drywall we'll get to when we get to it, but a water heater, heat, AC, we get to right away, right? And it was a bad thermocouple in the water heater. So that's an easy fix. And it wasn't old enough that the whole unit should have busted, broken down. So those are things that you do that we would do for our brothers and sisters. And same thing, a lot of my investors become friends over the years, right? So you want to take care of them and they refer you business and it's real easy,
Perfect. Okay. The next one is, how do I not be annoying? Now, this one is kind of funny because
you have some Karens that ask this question. No, just kidding.
I know. Obviously somebody's a people pleaser and they're just like worried about being annoying. No, literally they're like, is reaching out to my property manager once a week too much? Is that annoying?
Well, if there's nothing to talk about, yeah, because there's nothing to talk about, right? A perfect example, though, is I have a new client. I think you referred him to me. His name is Adam, and he's, I want to say Northern California, Boise, something like that. Maybe you moved to Idaho from California. Anyway, he's like, hey, listen, I want to get to 6 properties, but my wife and I are starting with 1. I go, great. You're very excited. Why? You're talking to me very excited. Why? He's like, I just have never done this. I've been involved in the industry. I've never done this. And I said, oh, okay. It's got 4 walls and a kitchen and a bath. It's not that hard. He's like, well, I know, but so I may ask you, and this is kind of a nice thing they said to me. They go, I may ask you silly questions. And you're like, there's no silly questions, but it's going to make him a better investor. So feel free. I get to emails within 24 hours and I get to text right away. And, feel free to FaceTime me or whatever you need to do, but those are, if you're cool about it, that's fine. It's just many times our investors don't have a lot of questions because we, like I say, we do new roofs, new HVACs. There's not a lot of expenses that you're going to incur with us because we do a full turnkey. It's kind of like when the inspection comes back, there's nothing we negotiate. All of it should be done by us. We don't negotiate all of that stuff because it's turnkey, So that's kind of what I feel, because that seems like a good experience for your clients, right? I mean, so you do that and they're like, wow, that was easy. I'm like, it's supposed to be.
Right, right. That's the idea. That's the goal. Yeah, and the way the systems are set up is, again, going back to your subway example, which I loved that example, is there's online portals for this reason. People can log into their portal and they can communicate. They can see when the tenant paid the rent, if there was a work order that was in there. You can see it all in there. I went 7 years without talking to one of my property managers.
Ooh. Okay, there you
And
go.
yeah, and people are like, "What?" And I'm like, "It wasn't that I didn't know what was going on. I saw everything in the portal. There wasn't a reason to call them up and be like, "Hey, explain this to me." The information was there. So it was, and we had a tenant for 7 years also, which, by the way, was amazing. So win, win, win. So, okay.
Here's another thing before you get to the next question too, is I many times am able to acquire my homes, because I like to buy and rehab and re-rent. I buy them from lazy property managers. Okay. What a lazy property manager does, and I hope this wasn't your 7-year experience, is they don't raise rents at all. Okay. They're like, oh, Bonnie or Joan or whatever is just doing a great. She's a little bit older, so we don't raise rents on her. And meanwhile, the investors' taxes are going up, right? And eventually trees need to be trimmed, right? They grow every year. And so all of a sudden the expenses are going up, taxes are going up, and the lazy property manager doesn't raise the rents. So then they call me up and say, hey, Michael, I know you're in town. This thing is only making me X. It's worth Y. Can you take it off my hands? I'm like, sure. I go in, I put some new stuff in there. I charge market rent. And all of a sudden I can make a profit off that because of a lazy landlord. That's not what you want. Okay. So we start everyone off with a 2-year lease, and we always increase the rent between year 1, year 2. We just want our tenants to be conditioned that that's what you do. This is not you're going to pay, $20 and, you raise rent, and we also do a great job with service. So as long as that landlord or that property management company knows that and believes in that, you'll get that if they own doors, because taxes do go up. That's how life works. So make sure you get that. Hopefully you had a good experience and they raise rents, and every now and again, we'll have conversations with these folks that says, hey, you know what? I know the rent's going up $100 or $200. Hey, we'd really, really appreciate a new screen door. Okay. Well, it's $359, plus markup. It's $400. Okay. So I said, let me ask the owner. And then I asked the owner, I say, will you split it with them? It's $200. I'm like, sure. Those are the types of things that we do because everyone feels they won,
I love that so much. And the example of a lazy property manager, I have another property manager that literally, I think I told this on a podcast a while ago, but the property manager literally sent me a message and they're like, hey, we need to replace the window in the laundry room. I'm like, why? What happened to the window? Like, it was a brand new window was last time I checked. And they go, well, I don't know. It's broken. I go, well, why? How did it break? This is important to know. So then they call me back and they go, oh, the tenant's son threw a baseball and the baseball went through the window. And I go, why are you reaching out to me? Like, why is it my problem?
I'm
It's
confused.
not my cost. Yeah. I'm like, why don't you collect the money from the tenant? And they go, oh, well, yeah, I guess so. Like, I'm like, what? Come on. Like,
Right.
help me
Right.
out.
Then you feel maybe I should have, then you take your hat and you turn it backwards and you're like, let me review some of my expenses here. Did they not know that this is tenant damage? So,
Right, right. So it's asking do not be afraid to ask your property manager those questions, because even if there's a plumbing issue, like, put it back on the tenant. If it was something that they did and if they caused it, like, directly, and they can and a plumber can prove, hey, your kid's toys down the toilet, like, that is their cost, and a good property manager will do that for you.
Right. Right. We had a basement. We don't have a lot of basements, but we had a basement and they called it in. Basement was flooding. So we went in and there was a sock in the sump pump. Okay. Well, I'm no expert. I know it wasn't my sock.
Right. Right.
So why should I
Definitely wasn't the owner. Yeah, wasn't the owner in California. It wasn't their sock.
Right. So you take a picture of it, you send, you document, and you're like, all right, well, Same thing with, everything else, that's also why we don't give, we don't really need to give a whole lot of security deposits back, because we document. And we're like, well, you can't do this, got to do this, cleaning fee, that, whatever. We're in a very, very landlord friendly state. I mean, our evictions are 45 days and $500. I mean, so it's very, very landlord friendly. So I'm like, well, why would you spend 10,000 when you could get a good rate of return and spend 500? These landlord friendly states make a lot of sense to me, but it's kind of what I know. Sure.
Yeah, well, that's literally why 80% of who I work with is from California or New York.
There you go. Yeah.
That exact reason. So, okay. Next question. We only have 2 more left. Okay. So, what are the red flags that tell you that a property manager is dropping the ball?
Red flags would be lack of communication. Okay. That I get that. I get frustrated. People come to me all the time and they're like, and what happens is property management companies are very difficult to scale. Okay. Really what happens, they start hiring staff when things start breaking down. Very few times are they proactive. Okay. So I've had sent 4 unreturned emails. Okay. And I still can't get an answer to why the window was broken in the basement or whatever you know what I mean? These are clues. So if they're not returning emails, they're not getting bids back. They're not, they can't be proactive in replacing furnace filters. They just have too many doors and not enough staff. Okay. So that's fine. I don't think people are malicious at all. They just, for whatever reason, they got overwhelmed. Okay. So that's a clue. Number 1 is lack of communication. Okay. Number 2 would be the time between a turn. Okay. You probably want to experience hopefully a lot of turns, but a turn should not take 2 months or 3 months between tenants. Okay. So if we bid, we'll give you a bid within a week, because the turn might be, X, you got to paint it or, whatever it is to turn the property. Right. So you turn it, you fund it, and it should be back on the market very, very quickly. We cross rent everything. So as soon as we have good pictures, we can go from there. So if it's taking too long to turn, what's going on? I've had somebody one time they tested their property management company out with a separate email address, and they said they were interested in the property, and they put in a lead that they wanted to rent it from a different email address, and they never got called. I'm like, that's bad. That's bad. I'm like, they're just too busy, and things like that. So so these are things, again, it's that's why we're very organic. My whole goal personally was to have a bunch of properties that require very little maintenance, that are super simple to manage. So I only manage properties that I've rehabbed. I don't even advertise. I just do that. I mean, maybe every now and again you come to me and I'll evaluate maybe one of yours, but otherwise it's just my stuff, because I want a great life. So I don't want to manage someone else's headaches. So I know if I have easy, fully rehab properties, it's a cinch to manage. So that's what I do. But people just take everything with a vowel in it and they just get overwhelmed.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. That was good. Okay. The last one. Now, this comes from somebody who recently had a very not so great property management experience. And so their question was, how do I protect myself from being taken advantage of when I'm not there in the area? Is there something that I should have done? Or basically they said, what systems or checks or habits or something I can put into place so that I can sleep at night knowing things are being handled. So basically they felt, taken advantage of. They were actually, it was an unfortunate situation with the property management company. And now they're a little bit nervous. So that's where that question's coming from.
Can you help me understand what taken advantage of means? Like, I would imagine financially in some way, shape, or form is my guess, but I'm not quite sure.
Rent ready costs. And I don't want to go too much into the details, but it was financial. It was definitely financial. Just every time they turn around, they're just nickel and diming them to death and making up costs that actually weren't there. Like, oh, we need to fix this. And there was actually nothing wrong with it. So clearly we're talking about somebody who purposefully was taking advantage of somebody.
You know what? We've all been around the block a little bit. If it's kind of like, I use this story sometimes when I do enjoy steak dinner every now and again. If you go and I order it medium and it's not right, it's still, mooing or something like that. And I say, hey, you need to put a little bit of fire underneath it, and the guy comes over and he fixes it for you. And I don't think he means poorly. It got out too fast. And if he takes care of it and then he comes by and shakes your hand and he may or may not buy you dessert, right? Okay, that's normal. But if he says, it's not my fault, it's good, they argue with you, you got a bad feeling. Why am I fighting with the guy who I'm giving my money to? You know that if you've got a feeling in your gut that it's not right, that's a clue. Okay. And there are plenty of property managers around, right? So you don't need anyone, and I've not really had, my business partner's girlfriends have left our company, but that's about it. He likes to date a lot of girls. But anyway, we don't have a lot of people leave, but if they do, that's okay. I mean, if there's not a match, there's not a match for whatever reason. You used to date my business partner or whatever reason it is, and so no one really wants the bad press, I hope, right? I'm going to go complain on whatever website you want to complain on. Just say, hey, you know what? Evaluate, do a better, I would say this if you were my sister, right? Do a better job of evaluating. Here's the 3 prospects, the other property management companies I'm looking for. Me personally, I don't go with the biggest one because you run into those systems because they have overhead. They have this, they have trucks, they have workers' comp, they have $5,000 a month in office space. Those are great, but if you have 100 doors, if you only have 1 or 4, you're tiny, man. So, or start with a provider like me because we don't grow that big. We want to go organic. But ask those 3 providers these questions and leverage someone like you. Because you're in those areas. You have more than one provider. You have more than one property manager in the area. So leverage someone like you, I would say, and go from there. Borrow from other people's experiences. I just had a birthday party in Las Vegas for my friend's 70th birthday. We leveraged one of my friend's experiences, and my buddy had just the time of his life. And we hardly gambled. It was just great experiences because I don't know Vegas that well, and we hired someone with great. He walked us around. He told us everything to do. It was great. So that's not that hard to do. Find someone with more experience than you. And are there, poor people or poor business owners in the world? Yeah. But it also happens when they get too big, So it's that sweet spot. It's difficult to find, So stay nimble, stay small.
Yeah, the growth pains can hit all around, not only on, we're all trying to build a business. I'm an investor that my portfolio is a business. Property managers or providers or whoever, all these people, they're growing a business as well. And if I all of a sudden tomorrow took on 100 properties, I mean, the chances of them all going perfect are not, that would be expectation, right? That expectation is not going to happen. There will be things that happen in your portfolio. And the thing we got to get away from is the blame game. You got to be educated. You got to be prepared. You got to have some risk. You got to have a little bit of thick skin. And when something goes wrong, the most successful investors I know are the ones who take it as a learning tool. And they go, how can I learn from that? Well, then guess what? The next property I buy, I'm going to ask this question specifically because I got burned on that. So now I know I'm not going to let that happen again. I want to, like what you said earlier, I don't want a 2-year lease so that it expires in December. I'm going to ask my property manager, can you please sign an 18-month lease? Let's be proactive here instead of pointing fingers and being so angry at that property manager. Let's keep our minds sharp and continue the education, right?
I like it. And for those of your clients who say, you know what, I like it, but I still want to, fly out and see it. I always offer this to people that, I always say, as long as you're not wasting your time, I'm not wasting mine. I will actually buy folks plane ticket and come on out, make sure you're pre-approved so you can make your, useful time, not just kick tires and be like, hey, this is 6 or 7 or 10 houses to choose from. These are 6 or 7 houses that we're rehabbing. This is our city. These are our professional sports teams. We have professional, basketball. We have professional football. We have this. We're the 13th largest city in the United States. And then we go from there. And you drive around the truck. You have a meal with us. You meet our family, and then leave your checkbook at home, and say, hey, that was a good experience. Michael, I have questions on these 4 properties. I'm going to pick up the 2 best. Is this one leased yet? I go, you know what? It's funny you ask. See, my daughter and I actually do the leasing together. She's the manager and I kind of oversee things. So I said, my daughter Vienna just nailed a fantastic tenant. I love it. And here's why. They've been a firefighter for years. They're married to the lady who works at the post office, or, something like that. I mean, that's great.
Right. Right.
That's the story. Let's go. If you don't want it, let me know. It's easy, So those are the types of things you can do.
I love that.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, okay, Michael, thank you so much for being
You're
here today
welcome.
and
You're
sharing
welcome.
so much wisdom. And I know this has helped take a lot of the mystery and the stress out of out of state investing for so many people listening. So, and if those of you who are tuning in, if today's conversation got you thinking about Indianapolis, or if you're feeling curious what it would look like to work with Michael and his team, reach out to me or somebody on my team. The show notes are going to be filled with contacts. So take advantage of that. That's what we're here for, to open up the Rolodex, so to speak. And again, that's aging me now, Michael.
Rolodex. There you go.
People are going to go, what is a Rolodex? But
Right,
that's
right,
what we
right.
do. I've got a big fat Rolodex, and I am there to help connect you with the right people, the right systems, and the right support so that you can do this confidently and successfully. Until next time, thanks for listening. And remember, you do not have to do this alone. So thank you again, Michael.
Thank you, Melissa.